Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Good evening. My name is Liz Danielson, and I will be your chairperson for tonight's hearing. I'd like first to make the land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the County of Haliburton is located on Treaty 20 Mishi-Saugig territory and in the traditional territory of the Mishi-Saugig and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties. We acknowledge a shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original Indigenous inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. Again, my name is Liz Danielson, and I'll be your chairperson for tonight's hearing. I'd like to introduce you to the members of the Land Division Committee, starting with Bill Blakes from Minden Hills, Pat Kennedy from Dysart et al., and Bob Snyder from Highlands East. With us as well as our Director of Planning, Steve Stone, and our Acting Secretary Treasurer and Senior Planner, Adam Kozlowski. This meeting is held through remote electronic participation in accordance with the Municipal Act as amended. The purpose of the hearing is to give each applicant or authorized agent the opportunity to discuss the application with the committee and to respond to written submissions which may have been received. It's also an opportunity for the committee to broaden our understanding of the application by asking questions. Members of the public who are participating virtually today may also make oral submissions to the committee. Any speaker who wishes to speak to the committee should provide their name for the record and provide the Secretary Treasurer with their mailing address or email address at the conclusion of the meeting. The procedure we use to hear the applications is in the same order as they were received in our office. Our Secretary Treasurer will introduce each application and our planner will provide a planning brief. When participants registered for the meeting, the file number of the application that they have an interest in was noted by staff. Participants wishing to take part in the hearing will be admitted virtually to the meeting and will be provided 5 minutes to speak to the committee. As the chair, I will then ask members of the committee if they have any questions. So we will now proceed with the agenda. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda as presented today? Moved by member Blake, seconded by member Kennedy.
Okay, be it resolved that the June 13th, 2022 Land Division Committee agenda be hereby approved. All in favor? Okay,
that's carried. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes of the May 9th meeting? Moved by member Kennedy, seconded by member Snyder. Thank you.
Be it resolved that the minutes of the Land Division Committee meeting held May 9th, 2022 be approved as printed and circulated. All in favor? And that's carried.
Yep. I don't believe there's any business arising from the previous meeting, so we will move into our applications for consent. Starting with the application by Turcotte from Highlands East.
Okay. Let me bring this up. So this application is for a new vacant shoreline lot, which is approximately 5.48 hectares in size. The retained lot is approximately 11.37 hectares in size and supports a Harvey farm. The report goes into some detail. This particular property has some history with previous applications. And so there was some thorough examination on this because of the interest of the public. In terms of provincial policy, it's in keeping or consistent with provincial policy because it allows for resource-based recreational uses, including recreational dwellings or cottages. In terms of the county official plan, as you know, it's designated for rural land uses, and rural land uses are permitted, which include resource-based recreational uses. And there was an environmental impact study site evaluation that was prepared, and that was presented to our peer review consultant. And it was comments were provided back to the applicant agent, and a second review by their scientist was provided, and a second peer review was undertaken by our or environmental consultant, with comments received as late as this morning. Both Adam and I took a look at those comments, and the issues that were raised first time through our peer review consultant, we felt they're addressed. In particular, one of the things that we asked for the consultant to provide us is with the basically a location for the new septic system on the proposed lot, and that was provided as well. So that was missing in the first go around with the study, and it has been taken up this time through the agent's consultant. So that's a good thing. In terms of the local official plan, you can see that it is in a shoreline designation. And one of the things that was noted in the local official plan was the capacity status of that lake. And we've both the local planner reached out to the ministry for verification on the status of the lake from a capacity standpoint, and it was identified that it's no longer at capacity. So with that, the policies are permissive to look at new law creation on that. So that was something that was important to get to the bottom of. Also, too, when you look at the zoning bylaw, there will be, again, the requirement for 30 meters of setback from the water line, and that will be promoted through any sort of conditions should the committee approve this. Based on that, we did, staff felt that it was consistent with provincial policy, conforms to the two official plans that governing land use, and we felt it was in keeping with good land use practices. Municipal comments were supportive, and as I said, we did get comments from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. The committee will also note that there was numerous emails and letters received for this application, and they've been appended to the report. The comments ranged from they just wanted to know the outcome of the proceedings. They were interested in protecting the wetlands, for example, and some were of the opinion that there shouldn't be additional approvals on this lake for the reasons that they felt it was at capacity lake. When you look at the conditions at the front of the report, the ones that I'll highlight for the committee is there's parkland dedication, because this is a new lot. Number 8 condition is about the requirement for the site evaluation report. So now that we have we have one report and addendums to that report, so that will be forwarded off to the local planner for her consideration. And you will see that, again, we're recommending an envelope of 1 hectare in size, and that will be based on the findings of the site evaluation report. So finally, there'll be a requirement for the rezoning of both lands. And as per provincial policy, there is a hobby farm that has to take into account for MDS separation distances. Our site inspection noted that hobby farm, the barn itself is on the south end of the property. So nearest we could figure there was maybe 4 horses out there. But in our estimation, there's sufficient separation between the barn and its outside storage of manure to not affect the shoreline lot. With that, staff recommends that the application be approved. The committee will note that there is one person in attendance for this one. It's Jonathan, and he is the agent for this application. I can bring him in if you like.
All right, you can bring him in, but first I would ask the committee if they have any questions on the planner's report. Mr. Kennedy.
One of the letters noted right of ways for the landlocked lots. I didn't see any reference to that in the report. Is that consideration we should be looking at?
If it's not included as a condition, we can include a condition that requires the applicant's solicitor to verify that any existing right-of-ways are not affected by the proposal. So that can be added.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
There's another one that referenced Crow Valley Conservation Authority with no further development. I didn't see anything. Is Potash Lake included in the Crow Valley?
Yes, it is.
It is. So should we have a report from Crow Valley on this? I've never dealt with the conservation authority, so I'm not sure.
Well, typically we look at the municipal comments very closely in regards to that. By all means, if the committee wants a comment from Crow Valley, I'll have to circulate them in that regard. Let me see if I'll see if it even went there in the first place. So
I was under the impression that they would have to submit a separate application through the Conservation Authority, but I'm not positive about that.
No, that is true if they have regulated lands. Yes. So.
Are there any other questions for Steve? Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, for Steve, just the reference to the other applications, is this current application different than the other applications?
Well, it's different in the sense that it was applied for now. The other ones didn't progress to any sort of approval. So
okay.
If it's a brand new one, so it's an opportunity for the committee to look at it freshly. So
I've got a couple of questions. I guess I did want to clarify access to the proposed lot, and that may be included. I just wanted a little bit of clarification. I couldn't see. Is the access to the lot going to be off, is it Caris Lane?
I would think so. I don't think it's going to be actually out onto the county road. I don't believe so. So let me just pull up one of the sketches.
I'd like to get clarification on that.
The agent may be able to help us out with that.
Okay, and the other question I had was your comment that Potash Lake is no longer at capacity?
That's the comments we received from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. Yes.
That's interesting.
And that correspondence was included in the staff report.
I just wonder if their requirements have changed, because it sounds like it was at capacity and now isn't. And
based on that, yes, I would think that the ministry does do ongoing inventory of lake capacity, and they will look at water quality issues and make determinations that way.
Any other questions for Steve before we speak to Mr. McLeod?
Nope.
All right, Jonathan, you wish to make comments?
Yes, please. First off, thank you for having me, Madam Chair and Planning Division Committee. All great questions, Mr. Kennedy. I was hoping to speak on the questions that you had. in regards to the right of way, when we first received all these letters of concern, my wife and I went through all of them, and to be honest, we've had the same concerns too. We right away contacted our real estate lawyer, and we went through. That was the first one, was the right of way, and to be honest, we didn't think that right of ways would be an issue. We just assumed that everything that was already in place would carry forward. So we were a bit surprised with that. But what she wanted me to convey to the Plan Division Committee is that there's a thing called, I just have to look, prescriptive right of ways. So all current landowners have prescriptive right of ways, and they're ways of any kinds of access that have been undisputed for 20 years or more from the conversion date. Now, the conversion date on this property was April 19th of 2010. So any, this would mean that any property that was built prior to April 19th of 1990 would have prescriptive rights. So then we went into the properties that are within this lot here. And so 1030 Carl's Lane was built in 1943. 1032 Carl's Lane was built in 1984. And 1054 Carl's Lane was built in 1941, I believe. So these cottages do have prescriptive right of ways. And to be honest with you, we want to be friendly neighbors, and this is not something that we're looking to take away from anyone. Like I said, we just assume that these would always be in place. So that was in regards to the right of ways. There was, I think, Madam Chair, you had a question about the Crow Conservation Authority, or somebody did.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, so this whole process actually started with them about 2 years ago, when we contacted them, and we spoke to Mrs. Lowe and Mr. Piddock, and through them, it took a little while, but we determined a good building envelope for this lot. So I do have a report for all of you. I didn't know that I had to submit it, but I can certainly send it to Mr. Stone after this meeting. And it shows a building envelope, which is basically where we've always kept, where it is on this application anyway. So, and I'll speak to the at capacity too. When we went to Highlands East, after we got these, I don't know if you want to call it approval from Crow Conservation Authority, we took it to Highlands East, and that's when we made our application. And that's where we found out that in their database, Inlet Bay was at capacity. But then there was some confusion, because we were also talking to Miss Gillen at Haliburton County, and in Haliburton County's database, it was not at capacity. So that's when we approached the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources, and his name is Mr. Orpana, and I believe like Mr. Stone said, the report is in this file here, and he consulted with his colleagues at Natural Resources. Took a little bit, but they determined that actually Inlet Bay is not at capacity. So there's no issues with that, and that allowed us to proceed with our application to you. He actually says we can confirm that the basin, Inlet Bay or Upper Potash Lake, because it's called the same thing, I can send you the map as well, where Mr. McCoy is proposing a severance, is not at capacity and not lake trout habitat. It also flows into North Bay, which is currently not at capacity. A severance as proposed would be acceptable at this location. So he did receive, I sent him the application that you all have received. So he's aware of everything as well. And pretty much that's where we are right now. Like we said, we did the environmental report. They went there 2 or 3 times, I believe. The last time was just to look at wildlife. And from what I understand, it's all checks out okay. There was a question in regards to how to access this. I'm not too sure if you do have the environmental report. I could also screen capture that page as well, but what we proposed was accessing it through a driveway that's already on McGillivray Lane. That's part of the property. And I think that was all the questions. I'm not too sure if there was anything else that I missed.
Does that raise any questions from the committee? Bob?
To Jonathan, thank you for those other responses. So the existing driveway that they plan to access, it is already a permitted access point?
It is, yes. If I'm not too sure if Mr. Stone or I apologize, Adam, I can't really pronounce your last name there, but if you do have the final report, it is on page 15. I'm not too sure if you do have it there, but it does list it. It does show it as a gray line into the proposed building envelope. So it is there. I wonder if it's...
So I am looking at a letter that we received, the previous Secretary Treasurer did receive from Crow Conservation Authority. So just scanning through it, there's no indication from the letter that they're in opposition to what's being proposed. They do note that there's several wetlands on the property, that no development is allowed in those wetlands. So based on the site evaluation report that's been prepared, it's there is an envelope for development outside those regulated features.
Okay, I would ask, just for the record at this point, if there is anyone else who wishes to speak to this application, either in favor or against. Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to approve this consent application? Moved by Member Kennedy, seconded by Member Snyder.
Be it resolved that the Land Division Committee of the County of Haliburton receive the report related to application for consent H00522 Turcot, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton grant provisional approval of application for consent H00522 Turcot, subject to the conditions outlined in the said report as amended.
Mr. Stone.
If I may, did Member Kennedy want that additional condition for verification of the status of the right-of-ways, or are you happy with?
That's fine. I think Jonathan did a good job describing that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, the resolution that I read contained as amended. I can scratch that. Would you like me to reread the resolution as original, or can we go forward?
No, I think it'd be all right to just scratch the as amended, as Mr. Kennedy has agreed that he doesn't need an additional condition.
Okay, so that amendment has been scratched, and I will call for a vote. All in favor?
Would you ask for a vote one member at a time?
Oh, yes. Member Kennedy.
Yay.
Member Snyder.
Yay.
Member Blakes.
Yay.
Chair Danielson.
Yay.
Okay.
That's carried. Thank you, Mr. McQuaid.
Thank you very much, everybody. Truly appreciate it.
Okay, the next application is by Schrader from Minden Hills for the creation of a new lot.
Just pulling this up now. So the Schraders have applied for an application to create a rural residential lot. This lot is approximately 9.43 hectares in size and will be vacant if created. And the retained lot is about the same size, about 9.1 hectares in size, and supports an existing rural residential use. The neighborhood is similarly developed with rural residential lots. There's no farming activity in the area. There is a natural feature stream located to the east, but will not really affect the development of these lands. When you look at provincial policy, it would be in a rural area according to the provincial policies. And in the rural area, in any municipality, you're allowed to have residential development, including lot creation, where it's locally appropriate. The county official plan designates these lands as rural. And again, you're allowed to have limited rural residential development, including home occupations and industries. There was a site evaluation report, environmental impact study that was prepared. There was no significant constraints or issues identified in the report. Looking at the local official plan, again, in the township official plan, it is rural, and they do allow for rural residential lots. You'll note that they go a little further in their detail, saying that they can allow for four lots out of a 100-acre parcel, and then it reduces in number as the acreage goes down. They also will specify in their zoning bylaw minimum lot sizes of 2 hectares in size plus 100 meters in frontage. In this case, both the retained and several lots exceeded the minimum requirements for rural residential lots in the zoning bylaw. Based on that analysis, staff recommended approval of the application because it was consistent with provincial policy, conforms to the 2 official plans, and is in keeping with good land use planning practices. You'll note the municipal comments were received and they were supportive of that. They did mention their own requirements for inspections for the sewage treatment system location. And they also noted that Public Works has no concerns in terms of a new driveway access on this road. Several comments, only one comment was received by a public agency, and that was from Bell Canada, and they did not have any concerns. And there was no input from public persons on this application. So looking at the conditions, most noticeably, there's a requirement for cash in lieu of parkland, and there's a requirement again for the lands to be rezoned, taking into account the scoped environmental impact study. So with that, staff recommends the committee approve this application. And Linda is in attendance, and I can bring her in if you would like.
Okay, that'd be good. Do any of the committee members have questions for Mr. Stone?
Nope.
On the report?
Just had one, Madam Chair, on clarification. On page 4 of the report, it does say minimum frontage is 100 meters on these smaller parcels, and these lots have 69 and 82. So
sorry, yeah, that's what the rezoning is going to take into account.
Okay,
they're very large lots, but the frontage.
Yes. Yeah, okay, so that was
my apologies.
Yeah, rezoned. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Schrader, you wish to? Oh, I'm sorry, Member Snyder. You have a question?
So just to clarify, the satellite view and the sketch do not show the buildings in the same locations. The sketch shows the building sort of behind that other Part 3 lot, whereas on the satellite view, it actually appears that it's beside. So I'm going to assume the satellite view is more to the correct. Any comments, Steve?
Well, I can't speak to how accurate the satellite lot lines are. I know, I'm just going to pull that one up so I can see it. But I also know it looks like the sketch that was provided by the applicant was sort of freehand drawn. So I would simply say that when they do the survey, they can certainly identify where the buildings are more accurately. That'll be needed to help help with the zoning amendment that they have to apply for anyways. So.
Any other questions for Mr. Stone? Ms. Schrader, you wish to speak to the application?
Yes, I do. I thank you for looking at this severance. I do appreciate all the help I've received. I'm not sure what Mr. Snyder was wanting to know about the building, and that there, the one lot is which we're retaining has a house and a barn, and it does have, there's no other buildings on the other severance parcel. But if you have any questions, I'll try and answer them.
Any questions for the applicant? Hearing none?
No.
Could I have a mover and a seconder to accept this application? Member Blakes, seconded by Member Kennedy.
Be it resolved that the Land Division Committee of the County of Haliburton received the report related to consent application for consent H00822 Schrader, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton grant provisional approval of application for consent H00822 Schrader, subject to the conditions outlined in this said report. And I will call on each member individually for a vote. Member Kennedy.
Yay.
Member Snyder.
Yay.
Member Blakes.
Yay.
And Chair Danielson.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us some additional information. All right, the next application, there seem to be 3 applications for creation of new lots by Warsh in Minden Hills.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, absolutely correct. This applicant has a large property, 40 hectares in size, and they would like to create 3 rural residential lots. The property is vacant right now and well treed, and as per standard practice, when we get these types of applications, they did submit a environmental impact study that looked at the suitability of the 3 lots being created. There were no significant issues identified with that assessment. When you look at provincial policy, again, like the last application, it's in a rural area as defined by the province, and that allows for rural residential development, including lot creation that is locally appropriate. The county official plan similarly identifies this area as rural. And again, you're allowed to have limited residential development, including home occupations and industries. And the Minden official plan, Minden Hills official plan, again, identifies the maximum of four lots per 100 acres. In this case, they're only proposing 3 at the time. And each lot itself are approximately 3 hectares in area, so that's well above the minimum standard by the official plan. And based on that, they would also meet the minimum standards in the zoning bylaw as well. And so based on that, county staff is recommending approval of these applications. We'll note that the municipal staff are in favor of that. Bell Canada has no concerns, and there were no public comments received on this application. So thank you. I do have Megan, who is the agent for the applicant. She's here to assist the committee. If you'd like her, I can bring her in.
Okay. Do any of the committee members have questions for Mr. Stone? Member Kennedy?
Yeah, Steve, so you have a recommendation in there that a site assessment report be included. So that, does the committee need to endorse that, or is that just going to happen?
No, that's sort of, I gather this was a new planner for the township who was commenting on and wasn't aware of this application. So when it comes time, that's just an easy one for the secretary to strike off. That's been cleared because it's been submitted. So,
all right. And secondary, if I might.
Absolutely.
Just, there's a note from Minden Hills that they need a 35-meter distance for a driveway entrance. Do we need to comment on any, that's a condition of granting on, I'm guessing part one that would need?
no, because when it comes time, let's say these lots don't get created or developed for years, they would cover that in their entrance permit approvals.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Stone? Megan, do you wish to speak to the applications?
Yes, please. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name's Megan Barrett, and I'm here on behalf of the Warshes this evening. Mr. Stone, thank you for the summary and introduction to the proposal. I'm not going to go through the details, but just so that the committee is aware, we do comply with the zoning bylaw and conform with the official plan as it's set out in detail in the staff report. One of the things that I should note, and I'm going to draw your attention to page 14 of the PDF of that staff report, just to clarify, it shows that the aerial imagery there shows the 3 conveyed lots that are to be created and then the 1 retained lot. And as you can see on this image, the 3 conveyed lots or 3 new lots all have the minimum, well, actually all 4 lots have the minimum 100-meter frontage requirement, and the 3 lots are the same size at 3 hectares, and then the retained lot is quite a bit larger. And part of the logic of that is to ensure protection of those natural heritage features that you can see set out on this aerial imagery, and were in part the subject of that EIS that Mr. Stone mentioned. And the majority of the lands are designated and zoned rural, as was mentioned, with the exception of those wetland areas. So again, we've structured the severances to sort of protect that one area in the rear. And in terms of the conditions that the staff have put forward in the staff report, my client is prepared to accept these conditions, but we do have a question about condition 5, and I think that this relates to the question that member Kennedy asked about the 35-meter distance from the road, from Plantation Road or the intersection. So I would ask Mr. Stone if he could clarify what any required entrance approvals means and how that condition will actually function, how it can be cleared. And then one of the other conditions is condition 3 that member Kennedy mentioned, related to the site assessment report. And I just wanted to note that my client did file an updated EIS in April that does delineate the wetland boundaries that you see in the aerial imagery, which was in response to comments from staff. And so I do think that condition has already been met, or at least substantially met. And just in summary, the applications in my submission are consistent with the PPS, conform with the official plan policies, and comply with the zoning bylaw, and will allow for appropriately sized lots to accommodate future development in the area that is in keeping with the rural character and would allow for servicing. And I'm here if you have any questions.
Maybe we'd look to you, Steve, for clarification on the entrance requirements.
Yeah, again, I would say that to answer the question about how is this one solved, probably there would be some sort of letter that deals with the first part of the second part, which is that they're recommended to consult with the town and municipality about that. Being able to obtain 3 entrance permits on lots before they're created might be a bit of a challenge, but I would say how we would clear that would be to say that they've actually engaged with the township and got a letter from the township that their entrance permit standards have been met. And that would be satisfactory to clear that condition.
Are there any questions from the committee of Ms. Barrett? Member Blakes?
Is the problem with the entrance, that's with the retained lot? And looking at the aerial, it looks like the, I think it's the south side of the lot is almost parallel with Plantation. Is that correct?
Yes, that's my understanding, and then my understanding is that is where this comment arises from. But given that there's no development currently proposed on the lot, there's no site plan. We were just looking for some clarification on how to actually clear the condition. We wanted to make sure this wasn't one that we needed to go for site plan approval, for instance, on in order to clear that condition.
Yes, I think part 1, part 2, part 3 of the severed lots, they won't have any issue by the looks of it meeting that requirement. It may just be the retained lot. Is that correct?
That could be correct. Now the frontage is 100 meters, so there's quite a bit of space to clear that 35-meter distance. But I still just, as I said, I was not challenging the condition, but simply seeking clarification on what it means and how to get rid of it.
Okay. No more questions.
Any other questions? Is there anyone else who wishes to speak either in favor of or against this application present this evening? Hearing none, and you're not aware of any, Steve?
No.
Okay. Then could I have a mover and a seconder for conditional approval of file number 1322? Moved by member Snyder, second by member Kennedy.
Madam Chair, we are dealing with the 3 lots. They are 3 separate individual consents. If committee concurs, what I can do is read the 3 resolutions and then call for 1 vote on all 3, if that's acceptable.
Okay, honestly, I'm not absolutely sure about the appropriateness of doing that or not. Sure. I mean, they're all the same, right?
Yeah.
Looked at all the conditions are all the same. The dimensions are all the same. So, so sure. There's a little part of me that thinks that, gosh, maybe we should be doing a resolution for each one separately. But if you think that one resolution covers our bases, then that's fine. We'll go with your recommendation.
Yeah, so it'll be 3 resolutions that I read, and then I'll just call for 1 vote.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so the first one, be it resolved that the Land Division Committee of the County of Haliburton received the report related to application for consent H01322 Warsh, and that Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton grant provisional approval of application for consent H01322 Warsh, subject to the conditions outlined in the said report. Second, be it resolved that the Land Division Committee of the County of Haliburton received the report related to consent application H01422 Warsh, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton grant provisional approval of application for consent H01422 Warsh, subject to the conditions outlined in the said report. And finally, be it resolved that the Land Division Committee of the County of Haliburton received a report related to application for consent H01522 Warsh, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton grant provisional approval of application for consent H01522 Warsh, subject to the conditions outlined in the said report. And I will call for votes from the members. Member Kennedy?
Yay.
Member Snyder?
Yay.
Member Blakes?
Okay.
And Chair Danielson.
Yay.
So that would be carried.
That's carried.
That would be carried. And that concludes our applications for this evening. We do have under other business, a verbal update on certificate for cancellation of consents.
Yes, thank you, committee. This is a new one for us at the county. There were changes brought forward by the provincial government, not this January, but the January before, that gives landowners the opportunity to cancel severances that they may have had in the past. And what's happening out there is that for the smaller lakeside properties, people are wanting to put on additions, or they want to have a detached garage, for example. And they're finding that even though they have two separate lots that they own, you can't put a detached garage, for example, on a separate property without a primary residential use there established. So if they have had, they both have the retained and severed portion, they can now apply to cancel previous severance, and it would revert back to its original state. It was just probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had our first inquiry. So we've done some checking around with our municipal colleagues in other parts of the province, and it's very similar to a validation certificate of title. So we already have an application for validation of title, and what we're going to do is amend that application to include a cancellation certificate for consent. And it does require us to circulate it to primarily the municipality to get their endorsement. And it does require a committee to actually approve the cancellation. So once we sort of amend that application and we get our first one in, it'll probably be about 2 months before the committee starts to see these. They will be rare, but I've been told there's maybe 3 or 4 of them that are waiting for us to establish a process. And so we hope to begin that process after tonight. Thank you.
Okay, any questions? Mr. Kennedy and then Mr. Snyder.
Not about that. Thanks, Steve, for bringing us up to speed on that. A couple of housekeeping things. I'm just wondering, Adam, could we get page numbers put on the reports just to make it a little easier to reference them if we're asking questions?
Sure.
And better mapping to show the relation. Bill brought up, I was looking at the wrong end of the subdivision on that. I was looking at parcel 1. I didn't notice the street on the retained lot there. So if we could just get a little better reference mapping, just to figure out where stuff is, that's all.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that,
well,
I like the report format.
So hopefully we're still working on updates to iCompass. One of the things that is challenging the current system is we can't import maps very well into the reports. So we're trying to see if we can solve that next go around with the edits. So.
Okay, sounds good. Any other questions? Bob, you had a question.
Yeah, so just back to what Steve was talking about there. This would apply to lots that have been subject to a consent application and have not merged on title. Is that correct?
No, that's right. They're 2 individual properties, but they're small enough that they want to join them back up again. So, okay.
So for instance, in the case of these 3 lots that we just approved, if no development took place and at some point they decided that they wanted to go back to its original state, that would be the process.
That's right.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Our next meeting is scheduled for July the 11th. Hopefully everyone is available for that. And I guess I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
Bill?
Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Blakes.
Be it resolved that the June 13th, 2022 Land Division Committee meeting be hereby adjourned.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thanks, guys. Well
Thanks.
done.
Thanks.
Good night.